Hi, my name's Phil, and welcome to LabourVision, where we talk about an aspect of Labour Party policy in contrast to the Conservatives' position. Only on this occasion, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm not actually going to discuss something that is Labour Party policy, but something that's been considered by Labour. Particularly interesting because it's something I've called for years. It relates to the thorny issues of NHS recruitment and student debt. Now, many of us would like to see university education being completely free, as it was when I went to university. Now, students get no grant and have to pay their own tuition fees, which they do through the student loans. Now, being fair, the loans are not as bad as first appear. They're not normal loans. You do not necessarily pay off the entire debt anyway. You pay when your salary meets a certain threshold. Up until that point, you pay nothing. And after a certain amount of time, any remaining debt is cancelled. As a result, some regard it as a sort of graduation tax. But if that's where you look at it, it's still a graduation tax that applies to those from more modest and poorer backgrounds. So why not just go back to grants and no tuition fees? Well, Labour were at least going to abolish the tuition fees until the economy disappeared down the toilet last year. The argument now is if they did that, they would be sacrificing spending on something else of most immediate gain. But they insisted it wasn't binary. It's not a case of we're not going to do anything. It's just we're not sure what we are going to do. Now, what I've argued for years is if you're going to have a position where there is no universal free university education, at least use that position in our favour. Make it free for those studying for professional qualifications that we are desperately in need of. NHS workers and engineers, top of the list, surely. That way, you encourage more people to pick up these careers, especially those from poorer backgrounds who may be put off by the idea of the student debt. Well, it seems that Labour may be edging towards this. Wes Streeting, who's Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, was meeting a local Labour Party group, and it was reported that he suggested there's a discussion about various ways of attracting more recruits to the NHS, including cancelling the student debt, which presumably would include the living costs as well, of doctors and nurses in England if they've worked in the NHS for so long. Now, my own personal suggestion has been in the past, not make students pay anything back while they're working for the NHS. So if you qualify as a doctor or a nurse or whatever, you go and work for the NHS, doesn't matter what your salary gets up to, you're never paying it back, right? And you cancel 10% of the debt for each year they do so. So after 10 years, if they've been working in the NHS for that period of time, they're debt-free and they've never paid a penny. What's more, because that is essentially a choice for the medics in question, because the shortages in the NHS, it's not like you can't get a job in the NHS, they can go to university knowing that they will not really accrue a debt as long as they intend to pursue a career in the NHS. Now, according to the report, there were those at the meeting talking about various options, including this one, as well as making graduates work for the NHS. Now, Streeting did make the very good point that it wouldn't be the best idea for a new Labour government when some of these doctors and nurses have just been on strike for the first time to take the approach of applying penalties. You know, he's thinking purely in terms of carrots. And I think there are several advantages to this. First of all, it makes a career as a doctor or nurse easier in terms of that financial burden that you're facing, because that can seem a big deal for, someone in their late teens. And if it does that, it obviously also helps deal with the recruitment crisis in the NHS. But it's also a powerful tool for social mobility. Because think about those who are most put off by this idea of student debt. It's those from the poorer backgrounds where their parents are not graduates themselves and also have an aversion to the idea of debt. So they may be less confident about taking it on, less confident that their future earnings will be good enough to make the investment worthwhile. So having a system in place that removes that fear, because it's like, well, all you have to do is work for the NHS and there is no debt, then it's not only a way of showing that, although removing tuition fees may not be feasible right now, that the party wants to move in that direction, but also getting people from non-graduate families to university. And because we're talking about a relatively small number of graduates benefiting, it would be, I think, very hard for the Treasury to say, oh no, we can't afford this. It's a very obvious investment and surely an affordable one. Mind you, I still think they should also include engineers as well. We have been desperate for those for decades. But there we are, very promising policy proposal that for the Labour members amongst you, maybe you'd like to bring up at a CLP and organise them to signal their approval to the Labour leadership. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe, as well as let us know what you think in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you later.